Hey traders, welcome back to the weekly Forex Forecast. We don't have much data coming out this week, so we've got a pretty clear run at the markets in terms of news events or the lack of news events coming up next week. It is, of course, the long weekend, so Monday is a US and UK bank holiday. However, if we look at the dollar, you can see we're still kind of lacking volatility in the dollar. We're still kind of correcting. We've yet to test the bottom of the channel here. And going into next week, the US dollar is slightly bearish to neutral, as we will see when we look at the performance metrics and the scores. And as a result, we're going to be looking at some dollar pairs either to the long side or the short side, so we can play it both ways reactively next week. But there are better opportunities coming up next week, and I do think CAD shorts and Swiss franc shorts are going to be two of the best themes to be trading next week. And we're going to look at a number of those in today's video. Okay, so moving on to the portfolio selection part, you can see we do have the New Zealand dollar and the pound as the only two currencies here with green performance wheels, and they're getting stronger. That means their performance metrics are bullish and they're becoming more bullish. So to the long side, I do like the New Zealand dollar and the pound, and also the third currency to the long side would be the Australian dollar. Pretty strong performance metrics, although it's getting weaker. Really, we want to see strong performance metrics which are getting stronger and vice versa. Weak performance metrics that are getting weaker. Those are quantitatively the best longs and best shorts that we can be looking for. And when we come into next week, you can see it's to the short side that actually some of the better opportunities are there. So the Swiss franc is to the short side outperforming, as it were, the New Zealand dollar to the upside. You can see it's much weaker than the New Zealand dollar is stronger. So my main themes heading into next week are first and foremost Swiss franc shorts and also Canadian dollar shorts. As you can see, also another very weak theme heading into next week. Now you may ask, well, the Japanese yen is actually the weakest, and maybe this is something we should be looking at. And you can look at Japanese yen shorts. They are technically speaking the best shorts heading into next week, and they've been like that for a while, and we've seen the Japanese yen really underperforming. The issue is we're back above the 155 level, which has been the line in the sand for the Bank of Japan, the Ministry of Finance in Japan. And we saw previously a double intervention once we started to move past this and once we started to pick up speed past this level. And with the Ministry of Finance, if they're intervening in the yen, it will tend to happen when you start to see the pace of the yen picking up. In other words, the yen starts selling off quicker and quicker above the 155 level. This is where you get the real risk of intervention. So going into next week, you can look at the Japanese yen shorts if you so wish, but you continue to take, as a short-term trader, that risk of shorting the yen and being on the wrong side of yen intervention. So for that reason, I'd rather take that risk off the table still as it currently stands. Focus on the Swiss franc shorts, the Canadian dollar shorts, primarily against the New Zealand, the pound, the Aussie, and we can also look at the euro, because on a relative basis, you know, euro, Swiss franc, because Forex is relative ultimately. Euro, Swiss franc to the upside, EurCad to the upside we'll look at as well. Now we'll also look at the dollar pairs, but you can see the dollar's kind of bearish to neutral. And so what I would like to do with the dollar is I would like to actually look at this where we can trade the dollar potentially both ways, because yes, it's bearish to neutral, but US dollar Swiss franc is still something we can look at to the long side, because if the US dollar is weak, but the Swiss franc is weaker, you will see US dollar Swiss franc rise. And vice versa, we can look at, say, pound dollar to the upside as a potential currency pair where we're seeing a stronger currency outperform the US dollar. So we will be looking at the dollar both ways in today's video, but primarily I like those Canadian shorts and the Swiss franc shorts as the top themes, the best opportunity to potentially make money next week, versus the New Zealand, the pound, the Aussie primarily, but we'll also look at them versus the euro. So to cut a long story short, my favorite pairs that we're going to be looking at are New Zealand CAD to the upside, New Zealand franc to the upside, pound CAD to the upside, pound franc to the upside, Aussie CAD to the upside, Aussie franc to the upside next week. We'll look at EurCad to the upside, Euro franc to the upside. And then we'll also look at some of the US dollar pairs, euro dollar, we'll look at US dollar Swiss franc, and we'll look at pound dollar heading into next week. Okay, so kicking off the watch list, as we always do, with crude oil. Now, crude oil is a very important asset. We cover it every single week. It's not always a good opportunity. Sometimes it's just kind of chopping around. But actually going into next week, crude oil shorts are good opportunities if we can get them. And I'm going to be looking for one of two things, either to sell crude oil on the pullback or sell crude oil potentially on the breakout intra-week you can also look at. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see a continued correction. You can see we're starting to push lower in crude oil. I'd like to see it do the opposite. I'd like to see it move in this way. And if we start to, and don't forget, you're not going to be able to trade every single asset we look at next week. It's about having a plethora of assets set up on your watch list so that when you get the opportunity, when they appear, you can execute on maybe a handful of them each week. So I'd like to see this pull back in crude oil, and what I'll be looking for is I'll be looking for a potential breakout intra-week. You can look for those breakouts intra-week. I do like to fade them from the upper and lower bounds, probably slightly more. I used to look at breakouts intra-week more, but I prefer fading them these days. But as we start to break out intra-week, you can look for the pullback, and very often you get maybe one bear flag setup or one bull flag setup per week on the 4-hour chart. And I'll be looking for that potential breakout, pullback, and you can look for that follow through into the 75.01. Now, once you breach this level, you essentially only have a 30% chance of continuing the week and finishing it below this level. And vice versa, if you breach the upper bound on all of these assets, you roughly have a 30% chance of continuing and finish the week above this level. Hence why, if we continue to pull back and we fail to break out intra-week, and again, this is a good profit-taking opportunity below this level intra-week because of those odds. But if we continue to pull back and we breach the upper bound, the 81.34, because the odds are against continuation to the upside, and that by the end of the week we should be lower down, back inside the range, any breach of this level is viewed as an opportunity to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range next week. Okay, so starting with the franc pairs with that short Swiss franc theme that I do really like heading into next week, and starting with the New Zealand franc. You can see we're kind of chopping, we're lacking a little bit of momentum, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this pull back next week. Any pullback to breach this low and the 0.55390, this is going to be an opportunity to start to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal. If we breach this level, and you can see there's a previous high here, if we breach this level, in this area, I'm going to be looking for reversal patterns on the 4-hour, 1-hour time frame, maybe less. I'll look for a 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range next week. And alternatively, if we start to trend down, and before we get to the lower bound, we break out, you can look for that potential bull flag setup next week into the 0.5656. Next is pound franc. You can see this is a market with very nice momentum. Part of the reason we've had very nice momentum to the upside is you can see there has been a trend change over in this area. We kind of pull back, we sell off, we get this attempt to make a new low and it fails. And once it fails, you can see there's another attempt and then starts to break through with momentum. So we are starting to trend to the upside in pound franc. That means any pullback in this market, and it looks like it needs to pull back, it is a little bit overdone in the near term, but any pullback is simply viewed as an opportunity to look for a breach of the lower bound at the 1.1559. And again, I like it when there are, especially in the 4-hour prior lows, you know, below here comes down. Places where in the past we've come down technically, tested, and then reversed higher. They're good confluence areas below these or above these levels. So any pullback, especially if we take out this low over here, I'll be looking for reversal patterns for 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range. And if we start to break out before we test the lower bound, that's going to be your opportunity to look for that potential intra-week bull flag setup into the 1.1740. The next franc pair we're going to look at is Aussie franc. Now, Aussie franc is a nice setup going into next week. You can see we do have a really nice push higher, and there's a significant high over here, which we've already kind of attempted to breach. You can see over here, sold off, kind of attempted, sold off, and now we've pushed through it. So if we come back next week, and this is all kind of one big kind of bull flag setup, you see this is just a correction as it currently stands. If we continue to correct and we breach the 0.6000, and stair step retest this high over here, it's going to be a great place next week to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range. And alternatively, if we fail to pull all the way back and we start to break out intra-week, that's when you can look for that kind of bull flag breakout. You get the momentum, and then the consolidation is the opportunity to look for the follow through into the 0.6123. Next is Euro franc. Now, I would prefer to short the Swiss franc versus the prior 3 currencies that we looked at, the prior 3 currency pairs. But I am still interested potentially in Euro franc to the upside next week, given the opportunity. Very much like Aussie franc, there's a very significant high over here, which has been broken. And if we pull back and we breach the 0.9851, This also trades into this prior high and you get that kind of stair step. So now you've got confluence, you've got a key area of broken resistance turning support, which will assist any 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range next week. And also, if we break out intra-week, you can look for that bull flag. Again, often you get just one of these, but sometimes you get two within a week on the 4-hour chart, but usually just one. And you can look for that follow through into the 0.9989. Moving on to the Canadian dollar short theme next week, which I like after the Swiss franc short theme as the best potential opportunity to make money, is New Zealand CAD. Now, New Zealand CAD is trending to the upside. We're making higher highs and higher lows. I can either buy this or do nothing. I cannot short this market next week. So any pullback, especially if we start to test this low and we breach the 0.82960, this is going to be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range. And often if we breach these upper or lower bounds, I'm looking to capture, a solid up day or maybe between 1 and 2 up days back inside the range. You don't tend to get more than that. If you breach the lower bound, you may come back sort of halfway. Not often do you test the upper and lower bound in the same week. However, if you fail to take out the lower bound, very often what you'll find is you get momentum, the pullback, and you can look for that bull flag opportunity next week into the 0.8435. Next is pound CAD. Now I can either be long or do nothing, very much like New Zealand CAD. I cannot short this market next week. And you can see we're in the process actually of this inverse head and shoulders breakout, potentially in a third wave to the upside. And these can keep going and keep going and keep going for quite a way. So any pullback next week is simply viewed as an opportunity to look for buys or long positions, not for any potential shorts. And if we breach the 1.7284, that's the key level to the downside next week, and we have a 4-hour low, we have a 4-hour high, maybe we could come back and retest this high. That would be a pretty good area to look for confluence as well, but it's quite deep. You don't always get tests this deep. But if we do, this kind of area, you could look at this area here as a great place to start to look for reversal patterns, double bottoms, inverse head and shoulders on the 1 hour, 15 minutes next week. And if we get that, I'm going to be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range. And alternatively, if we fail to test the lower bound and we start to break out with momentum because we get strong price action to the upside, that's the opportunity. You can look for that intra-week bull flag setup in the 4-hour chart into the 1.7527. And above there, that would be a great place to book profits on any intra-week trades in this market. Next is AuCad. Again, I can either buy this or do nothing. Cannot sell this market next week. And what I'll be looking for is very similar to the other markets. If we can pull back, there are some nice highs over here. You kind of have this consolidation over here where we break through. If we pull back and we start to retest these highs and we breach the 0.89850, that's the key area to the downside next week. Once we breach this is where the odds turn against further downside in this asset. In which case, this is where I like to start to put my chips on the table, when the odds are in our favor and they start to stack up in the direction we're looking at trading overall. So any pullback below this level, we'll be looking for intra-week reversal for 1 or 2 days to the upside. And if we start to break out before we test the lower bound, again, you can look for that momentum, pullback, and that bull flag setup into the 0.9131. And those are really the only two things I'll be looking for in any of these assets. Not just next week, but in any week that I'm looking to trade these markets. Next is EurCad. Now again, I do prefer the other CAD pairs we just looked at, but this is on the watch list. It is on the table heading into next week. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see continued pullback. And of course, if we breach the 1.4730, especially if we breach this and we get a bit of volatility and we test this low, that's going to be a great place to start to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in this asset back inside the range by the end of the week. And if we start to break out before we test the lower bound, just like all of the other assets, I'll be looking for a potential bull flag setup, so momentum, pullback, and then follow through into the 1.4913. Okay, so finishing off the Forex universe with the dollar pairs before we move on to gold and silver. And I would prefer next week to trade the dollar pairs, preferably from the upper and lower bounds. You can in euro dollar potentially look for that intra-week breakout because the euro is in the positive side, the dollar is in the negative side. But usually the intra-week breakouts work best when you have very, very, very strong currency to the upside and then a very, very weak currency to the downside. So, New Zealand franc to the upside, that is the kind of market you can look at those intra-week breakouts. If they're more evenly matched, then you tend to get better opportunities from fading them. So primarily I'd like to look at the upper and lower bounds next week. With euro dollar, you can look for that potential intra-week breakout to the upside and see if you can get that kind of bull flag set up. We already sort of have one over here and we're consolidating. Any kind of breakout and pullback would be viewed as the opportunity to look for longs into the 1.0929. Or if we pull back and we breach the 1.0764, and especially if we take out these lows here, there's a high over here, so there's a nice area down here that you can look for a 1 or 2 day reversal in euro dollar to the upside if we start to breach the 1.0764 next week. So really I can either buy euro dollar next week or do nothing. I don't want to short euro dollar personally speaking. If I am going to be a buyer of the US dollar, it wouldn't be against the euro, it would be against something like the Swiss franc or the Canadian dollar. The next pair we can look at in terms of the US dollar next week is pound dollar. We are kind of tentatively trending to the upside. We do actually have a trend reversal here, as you can see. We've made a new high, we're making new highs, we've made a higher low. But overall, you know, are we going to continue? It's hard to say, but certainly going into next week, I do favor long positions in pound dollar given the opportunity. Again, any pullback can be viewed as an opportunity to look for that intra-week breakout potentially, because the pound is in the positive side of the performance metrics and the dollar is in the negative side. However, what I would really like to see with all of the dollar pairs, you know, the upper and lower bounds are my preference next week in terms of trading them. If we pull back and we test this high and we kind of stair step this again and we breach the 1.2629, now we've got a couple of reasons why we can start to look for those kind of 15-minute reversals, 1 hour reversal patterns, double bottoms, inverse head and shoulders, and look for that 1 or 2 day reversal back inside the range next week. But I can either be long this market or do nothing. I cannot short this market next week. Next is New Zealand dollar. You can see we've got this big momentum. We kind of tested the high and we just continue to consolidate. So I can either be a buyer or do nothing next week. I cannot sell this market. If we pull back and we test the prior high, and again we stair step, so we trade into and below the 0.60480. So now we've only got, based on the volatility of this asset, we've only got a 30% chance of continuing much lower. And at the same time, we retest the prior high as broken resistance turning support. This is going to be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in New Zealand dollar next week. And again, if you get that kind of bull flag breakout and you get strong momentum and then you get the pullback, that's going to be an opportunity to look for a bull flag setup into the 0.6193. If it just chops around, then that's not really a bull flag setup. What you want to see is you want to see momentum, you know, and then a consolidation. You want to see momentum and then a consolidation. That is what gives you the signal that you are going to, you know, momentum precedes price. What that means is you get momentum, you get consolidation, and then that momentum precedes the next leg up in price. But either way, I cannot sell this asset at any point next week. And the final two dollar pairs are US dollar franc and US dollar CAD. And these just give us additional options whereby if we start to, for whatever reason, see strength coming into the US dollar, we've got a couple of markets we can pivot to as a plan B, and we can try and take advantage of that reactively. Because yes, it's good to have a plan. It's good to try and be predictive in the sense that we're trying to, before the week starts, create a watch list with markets where we identify, are buying opportunities going to work best or short opportunities going to work best, and in what assets is that going to be the case. However, there's nothing wrong with having additional options on the table, you know, should the initial moves not play out and you get, say, strength in the dollar instead of weakness next week. So any pullback, I would be looking at this as a potential plan B, preferably with these dollar pairs. If we trade below the 0.9069, I would be looking for momentum to fade and then a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. And again, why is that? Because the dollar is in the negative side of the performance metrics, and so is the Swiss franc. So you're making the statement that when you've got two weak currencies, especially with the Swiss franc being weaker than the dollar, should we breach the lower bound, we shouldn't find any direction. I mean, we should just kind of fade and reverse. Why? Because two weak currencies tend to chop and tend to range. So if we start to see direction coming in, we start to trade below the lower bound, we're making the statement that that's likely to fail, you know, and price will come back inside the range. If we get the breakout intra-week, you can look for it. I would want to see some kind of bullish catalyst if I was going to look at this intra-week. You know, I'd prefer the upper and lower bounds, as I said. However, you can look for that potential reversal into the 0.92268. The fading of the upper and lower bounds are likely going to be better opportunities than intra-week breakouts in the dollar pairs next week. And the final US dollar pair in the Forex universe before we move on to gold and silver is US dollar CAD. Again, making that statement, when you have two weak currencies, in all probability, should just chop around and range and fail to find direction. So on that basis, if we do come down and we breach the 1.3571, especially if we run into this support down here or these lows, this is going to be a place I will be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in US dollar CAD. Again, maybe if we get some kind of unexpected bullish catalyst in the dollar and you get that kind of momentum, maybe you can look for that bull flag, but preferably I'd be looking for that reversal back inside the range if we start to trade below the 1.3571 next week. Wrapping up the video with gold and silver, and I'm going to set gold and silver up to potentially play this both ways. I actually prefer it when we have the ability to trade both ways and we can be reactive, because it gives us a better chance of making money. Because if we're predictive and it doesn't work or we're wrong, then obviously you kind of want a plan B. So if we've got both options on the table, it does increase our odds of capturing a successful setup heading into the week. So any pullback in silver, I will be looking at this only to the long side for potential buying opportunities. In other words, using silver for DXY short opportunities or US dollar short opportunities. So any pullback, especially if we breach the 29.17, we might breach this and test the prior high. That's the kind of area I'll be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in silver. Alternatively, if we break out intra-week in silver, you can look for that bull flag setup into the 31.91, and probably if we breach that, we'll probably take out the prior high. That would be a good intra-week profit taking opportunity above this level into the prior highs for any intra-week long opportunities in silver. I'm wrapping up the video with gold, and actually gold is in the negative side of the commodities performance metrics in the hedge dash system, and silver is in the positive side. So this is one of the reasons why, in fact, it's the primary reason why I'm looking at potentially shorts in gold if we get DXY strength, and longs in silver if we get DXY weakness. Now, any pullback in this market, you see a very, very strong sell-off, and we've actually failed at the prior high. We may be coming back to test this low as a kind of potential double top attempt. But any pullback in this market, I can only look for one of two things. Either a breach of the 2383.25, and perhaps we trade into this high over here and we start to pull back. This is going to be a place next week. If we do this reactively, I'm going to be looking, once we take out this level, I'm going to be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the downside in gold. Or if intra-week we're consolidating, and we start to get some strength in the dollar and gold sells off. And of course, gold and silver can move, the same way as the dollar. You can see the dollar moving up and gold moving up, but the dollar moving to the upside is a headwind for gold, which is already in the negative side of the performance metric. So any breakout intra-week, you can look for that bear flag setup in the 4 hours down to the 2287.14. And probably if we breach this level, we'll probably take out the low down here as well. So that would be a good profit taking area for any intra-week shorts in gold next week. So that is it from me for today, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, why not consider joining us in the GMT training room each day, where I look at the best markets as well as sharing real-time setups that I'm personally looking at trading with members as part of our GMT training program. Don't forget, you can also get a 2-week free trial to the cutting-edge hedge dash trading app used in today's video by heading over to www.hedge-.com.